Hey traders, welcome to the Monday strategy session. I'm expecting a bit of a quiet day given what the market is doing. We're in a lot of lower time frame corrective structures, so that's going to take some time to play out. With that being said, there are a couple of markets we can look at that may get some legs before those corrections play out. So just an example of what I'm talking about on these corrective structures, something like, say, the Aussie dollar, US dollar. A lot of this is happening across the chart where we have a big impulse and now we're waiting for this correction to play out, which is obviously going to take some time. So we're going to have to just give this room to breathe before looking for opportunity in those kind of charts. But something like, let's say, the US dollar yen, I'm more inclined to think is going to get moving a little bit earlier on because we have this kind of ABCD, looks like a running triangle structure. If you look at the nature of the waves, very big impulses down, impulse up, 1, 2, 3 down, impulse up. I'm expecting a little 1, 2, 3 down towards kind of 106, maybe 105.50. I think more up in those areas. 106 is probably more likely, and then a turn to the upside. And then I'm looking to get long in the US dollar yen because those running triangles, like we say, if you can get in, they're very challenging to trade. But if you can get in at the right level and you see them starting to move, this thing should really start to take off pretty quickly. So I'm keeping a close eye on this, especially when we start to look at something like the Nikkei, which looks like it's starting to begin a really big pullback, a 30% drawdown in the Nikkei. So if yen stocks or Japanese stocks are going to start to sell off, you'll see that capital flow into the dollar looking for a little bit of safety, a little bit of capital gain in the dollar. And that, I think, is one of the reasons we can look for the US dollar yen to really take off over the next few days. So we'll be keeping a close eye on this throughout the day. I don't think anything's going to happen today, but it's just something to keep an eye on. This is I'm not saying this is today, but it is kind of more recent. I'm expecting it in a more recent manner than any of the other pairs. So we'll be watching this. Platinum is another one. Don't think it's going to be today, but as you can see, exactly as we spoke about in yesterday's trading weekly game plan, we're looking for that little rally and we're looking to fade this rally up towards kind of 12.50. And we're getting some good legs this morning. This should continue to rally. And then we can look for that turnaround and either trade it as a flag, which isn't ideal, but it is there if we get a really clean flag, or we're just going to be able to put our entry order below the lows and just see how things play out. So looking for platinum to start engaging us in the right manner, that bearish platinum market to start taking over. Euro pound. This is one, obviously, we're already in. You should already be in. And now it's about considering, do we take this trade and move it to break even and take the lot, or take break even? As you can see, we're sitting right near those break even levels. Or do we hold on to it and see what can develop out of it? Usually when you have a trade like this and it's been sitting for so long, it's more intelligent to take break even. I'm kind of leaning towards, what if we just let it breathe, give it some room. We've got a nice wide stop loss. And all we have here really is a really big impulse to the downside from, let's just say, the 4-hour chart. As you can see, we're impulsing all the way from here at around about 91, somewhere in that region, all the way down to 85.50 basically is where the bottom was. Then we rallied off of there. So we have a couple of options of where we headed from here. The one option to do in order to manage this trade is to say, okay, well, worst case scenario is that we have a corrective structure forming here, in which case we should chop back down here and at some point rally back up. So wait for that second rally up back into positive territory to move to break even, because that's giving it room to breathe and also giving you time to see how it's going to develop. Because there's nothing to say that we don't get this lower time frame correction, like we said. Excuse me. We don't get this lower time frame correction that we're looking for. This one here, maybe we chop back down, just break into break even territory, then move back up to the highs, form a little bit of a running flat, and then take off from there, in which case we have to find a new entry and we kind of lose the ground we've created through this little trade that we've entered. Then worst case scenario, if we're wrong and this thing just continues to chop down to maybe the back to the lows, at the very least we should move back up into break even as this ABC plays out. So we have kind of if we look at it in three scenarios, scenario one is we correct here and we take off to the upside, in which case we in the trade and we're making profit. Scenario two is this little wiggly line here, where we chop back down, we go into negative territory, then we get a nice little rally to the upside, and we can take break even there, knowing that the next move down is a continuation to the downside, something along those lines. Then the third scenario is this little push up is just a straight up impulse or zigzag correction, and then the next move takes us out, or at the very least will take us down here. From my point of view is, if we've come all this way on the 4 hour, how are we just going to get a tiny little correction to the upside and then continue all the way down to our stop loss? We've got a nice wide stop loss, so at the very least we'll go break these lows once again, and then from there either rally where we change the trend to the upside, or from there we go into correction and we can still get break even. So the way I'm looking at it, there's a lot of options here where we can get break even if we are patient with it, and we're very unlikely to take this loss. So I'm more inclined to stick with the trade, even if we go into the loss, and then manage it from there moving forward over the next week or so, see how things play out. So I think I'm going to be patient with this one. The prudent thing is obviously just to take risk off the table, take break even, and look for an entry. But I think the upside is worth it. I think it's worth holding on to this one because it is a higher time frame trade. We're not trading this on the lower time frames with a little 4 hour rally that we were looking for. This is a higher time frame trade where we're looking to get up to potentially as high as 92. And if that is the case, looking at 92, maybe even more, if we get some legs to the upside, then we're looking at a really nice reward if we hold on to it. So I'm more inclined to hold on to this, see how things play out. And if we take the loss, so be it. So I'm a little bit more leaning towards a riskier point of trading and seeing that reward play out in our favor down the road. So that's how I'm going to be playing this one. Let's go into Euro New Zealand because it's another trade management. Euro New Zealand, I'm more inclined to move to break even. First of all, we've run a much further way. Second of all, there's a possibility we have our analysis wrong. And instead of trading what we think is this one to the upside, perhaps what we've lost sight of is that this is the next move up of this impulse. So this becomes a little bit of a running flat, something along those lines. And now we're going to start to see this move to the downside. And if that is the case, then so be it. Then we can take break even. That makes more sense to me, to take break even on the Euro New Zealand trade and then maybe look for a turnaround in the future. So that has I'm more inclined to think that if we're wrong on this one, break even is much better. Because even if we're wrong on euro pound, it's more likely that we're going to go break these lows really briefly before getting another kind of rally to the upside or something along those lines. So get something like this down here and still be able to get break even down the road. In Euro New Zealand, if we're wrong, we're not going to get another chance at break even. It's very unlikely. So I'd rather move this to break even and then see how things play out moving forward. Euro yen is looking like a pretty interesting trade in my view. This is one of the trades I'm actually more keen on and we can be really receptive to over the next couple of hours, see how things play out. We haven't had any MACD crossovers on the hourly just yet, but I'm inclined to look at this and see how things develop. Perhaps we can look at this as a wave A of a correction. So if this starts to just continue to look corrective, this 1, 2, 3 up, we chop around here, we push back down here, and then we get another rally, then I'm inclined to put an inch order below these lows and see how things play out. Downside target, pretty good there. As you can see, you'll probably get a 4-5 to 1 trading this down to this 123 area. So we're keeping an eye on this. There's nothing really in setting up right now. I just want to see how this plays out and see if anything arises where we can get a trade out of it. Pound Oz is another one. Again, we're trading this as this E wave to the upside. It looks like it's done. If we can start to get some downside momentum, ABCDE after a big impulse, the structure looks really good to me. It still looks really good and lined up. And when we look at the lower time frames, we're starting to get a little bit of a move to the downside. So I'm interested to see how this played out. If we can maybe get a little bit of a flag here, then I'm keen to take a little 1% position in this trade. As you can see, we have a little pop higher. We have what looks like a little 1, 2, 3 down. If we go into the really lower time frames, I'm willing to look at this as an up, a down, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We push down again. If we pop higher again, I'm willing to look at this as a little bit of a flag on the hourly and then put an entry order below the lows. In which case, that could be a really good trade to the downside and something I'd be interested in taking. So keep that on the cards, see how things play out moving forward. Bitcoin looks like we're having that little rally that we were looking for. I think if you saw yesterday's trading game plan, I had this a little bit more complex where I was trading this as a little bit of a running flat. It's still possible, but at the moment, I'm just going to keep it simple and suspect that what we're going to see is a rally up towards 50,000. I think you can sell that 50,000 rally if you do trade crypto on margin. That sell should pay you in the longer term or in the medium term at least, because it is a really clean 1, 2, 3 up, 1, 2, 3 down, nice little ABC, nice complexity in the B wave. We're getting this rally up towards 50,000 as a C wave, and we should see downside from there. Ethereum, I think even more attractive as the short. We look at the structure, it's the same thing. We have a nice push up. We have a nice chop down, nice little central triangle structure in the middle. You know, we always like a B wave as a triangle, a central structure. Makes a lot of sense for the uncertainty in this region. We push down. We should push up towards, I guess, 1600 would be the level here. And then we can expect further downside from there. So this is looking really good. And I really like this trade in this region. Going back, silver, we in trade already. Obviously could have taken break even here, but I'm going to hold on to it. I have a good conviction for this trade. I really like it. I do want to hold on to it. So I think we're just going to go into correction here, and we should see some more downside moving forward. That's what I'm holding on to here. I just don't see how we can impulse down unless, obviously, I have this wrong, and this is your impulse. We get a 1, 2, 3 up correction. See, we didn't even get towards. We can maybe say that was a 0.618 move to the downside, and that's a 1, 2, 3, and now we're pushing up from there. I just don't see that as being likely. I'm more inclined to think we're heading down, especially when you zoom out and you can see the structure on the daily says we have an impulse at 1, 2, 3 down, 1, 2, 3 up, and we should impulse down back towards 22 as a C wave. And then when we go even further out, you can see how the bigger structure is a 1, 2, 3, and we should see further downside. So all of these charts to me say downside. I'm in the trade. I've got a good position. I don't want to mess around trying to get in again. It's only a 1% position. So I'm holding on to this with the expectation that we're in a lower degree correction and we should see continuation to the downside. Gold, my risk is already off the table, but I still don't see how this stops short and then rallies all the way back up to the highs given the structure we're looking at. It does have corrective tendencies. We did go break this low once again, and there's the possibility we're now just going to rally back up to the highs. If we do, so be it. I'll take break even. So in all my precious metal trades, I only have 1% risk on the table, and my downside reward, if I stay in these trades, is potentially really high. We're looking at a 7-to-1 on gold. We're looking at the very least a 2.6-to-1 on silver, but I'm more inclined to think I'm going to hold this down towards $4 if my thesis starts to play out, in which case it's more like 15, 16-to-1. So as you can see, I'm really willing to take on 1% risk when the downside potential is probably 32% on my account. So it's a really big trade potential. So I'm going to hold on to that and see how things play out moving forward. So cool, guys. That's it for today. Not much on the cards. Like I said, quick summary, we'll be keeping a close eye on US dollar, yen. We'll be keeping a close eye on platinum. We're managing euro, pound as it goes. We're moving euro, New Zealand to break even. And we're looking for potential break even or potential entry on euro, pound if it plays out, and potential entry on pound Oz if it plays out as a little bit of a flag. And then Bitcoin. I'm not trading Bitcoin short. It's got great volatility, but I'm just not into trading these things on margin. It's just too dangerous in my view. It can really go against you really quickly. So I'm more inclined just to get out of my crypto position and see how things play out from here. and Ethereum is the same thing. And then obviously we're just managing our silver and gold positions moving forward. So cool, guys. That's it. We'll chat again tomorrow. Have a great